Next up, we're going to hear from 700 Credit, and we're going to talk about how are you capturing driver's licenses and protecting consumer data. To lead us in that conversation, you know the rules, living room. Let's give him a loud, big round of applause to Mr. Ken Hill, Managing Director of 700 Credit. Ken, you ready? Yes. All right, stage is yours.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. So today I'm going to talk a little bit and challenge everybody to think about just that topic, right? How are you capturing driver's licenses today in your dealership? How are you protecting the consumer information? If some of you are managing more than one store in a group, right? How confident are you that your stores are doing it the correct way? And are you taking advantage of some of the opportunities that point affords you? Okay. Right, first, dealership fraud. Dealership fraud is on the rise. There's multiple types of fraud: synthetic ID fraud, fake driver's licenses, first-person fraud, right? When you're capturing that driver's license, that's a point where you can eliminate fraud, and you can validate that that person is who they say they are. Everybody's dealing with theft. We got a couple of slides on that. We did a survey of dealerships. 65% of dealerships state that they're experiencing one fraud attempt per month, 35% 5 per month, and 50% of dealerships stated over $50,000 they're losing in fraud per month, right? That's a lot, and I think everybody is being exposed to theft, even on test drives. People come test drive a car, and they leave the lot and they never come back. So with driver's license authentication, right, you want to take advantage of that driver's license, validate the license, validate the person that's sitting in front of you, so that you're eliminating fraud. We did a seminar actually on synthetic fraud. I don't know if a lot of you are familiar with what exactly synthetic fraud is. It's a synthetic identity that's actually built at the credit bureaus with pieces of information, real information, and they build an identity by building a credit file. You can do that by simply going to a finance application online, applying for a credit card, applying for anything that they're going to try and run your credit. And as soon as they run your credit with that fake identity and they can't find that individual at the credit bureau, it's going to create a record, an identity at the credit bureau. That's how that synthetic ID is created, and that's just the beginning. From there, they're going to pay someone to add that synthetic identity as an authorized user to that person's credit file, and that person actually has a good credit history. I don't know if many of you, I've done it with some of my children, right? Adam as an authorized user to my credit card, and that builds their credit file, that builds their credit score. It's a good thing when you're sending the kid off to college, and he gets back from college, he's got a 750, 760 credit score, and he can start applying for his own lines of credit. But fraudsters use this technique to attach themselves to an identity that has good payment history and that builds that credit file and builds that credit score. Now they can go on and continue to apply for cards on their own with that false identity. And that builds that credit file, that builds that score. So that's synthetic identity, and what they're working for and towards is that bust out. A bust out is a term that they'll build up that credit file, credit cards, lines of credit, and with the intention at that bust out point that they're going to walk away from everything. Walk away from their credit cards. But the problem for our industry is the number one purchase that they're going to try to make before they bust out is they're going to go try and buy cars. And sometimes more than one, and sometimes multi-identities more than one. And then they walk away from everything. So it's very important that we try to capture that. And one of the ways that we can capture it is sort of a get to know your customer, fraud first approach, right? When you're capturing that driver's license, validate it. It's the number one method to stop synthetic identity, is to validate the identity of that person that's in your dealership or that you're doing a remote deal with. Validations of driver's license, right? There's various types. Remote deals, you can do selfie verification against the image on the license, biometrics, so that again you're validating that remote identity. They can that selfie comparison to that biometrics. You can bounce it off the DMV. You can validate the document and bounce it off the DMV to ensure that it's a valid. That information off the license is actually what's registered at the DMV. So that's one benefit to streamlining your driver's license capture is to attack fraud and to stop fraud. The other is, how are you handling that driver's license in your dealership? Is it in compliance with the safeguards regulation? Hopefully everybody's familiar with that. Going from the bottom up, I highlighted some of the orange, right? You're required to log and how you're disposing of every point in your dealership where you're capturing consumer information, right? How are you doing that with driver's license? You also have to ensure that that information is encrypted at rest. Over 60% of dealerships today are still utilizing paper deal jackets, right? Are you making copies of driver's licenses on copying machines and you're putting the paper images in that paper deal jacket? Well, how are you governing and auditing that process to ensure that you're securing that consumer data? Not easy. And 80% of those dealers, right, are putting that copy of that photocopy of that image in the paper deal jacket. 60% of dealerships today are utilizing a paper dealership. That's a big number. But what's bigger is that 40% of dealerships have moved off a paper deal jacket. That number is just going to get larger and larger, and where are you going to fall in that, right? Are you going to wait till it's 20%, 10%? No, if you're not thinking about moving to a digital deal jacket, you need to. Now I can capture that driver's license, I can capture the image, and I can automatically put it in the deal jacket. I don't have to have employees handling the consumer's license. I can keep those images in the deal jacket, and if your lender requires you to submit it through your lender, you can do that through your DMS, Route 1, Dealertrack, right? And you don't have to worry about that physical copy. Also don't have to worry about the consumer, right? At a dealership yesterday, come up to our booth and say, my sales rep is texting the consumer and asking them to text them a copy of their license. How is that securitizing consumer information, right? Are your sales reps doing that to consumers they're working with remotely? You want to standardize that process, take that process out of your sales rep's hands, and automate it inside your dealership. Right? The results of these bad processes, right? You're exposing the consumer's PPI. You're probably in violation of the Safeguards Act by having, consumers email images of their driver's license, right? How are you securitizing that? That image of that driver's license now is in the email system at your servers, maybe your backup systems, your file systems, and it'll be there for a long time. And one of the things that you don't, right, if you are audited, you have a data breach, right? The auditors are going to come in, and I think we all know that, data breaches can happen to anyone. But if you do have a data breach, they're going to come in, they're going to audit your processes, and they're going to audit how you are safeguarding information. So have your ducks in a row, so to speak, before any of this can happen. Again, the digital deal jacket, it stores all that information, it's encrypted at rest, and if you automate the process to get it into that digital deal jacket, you don't have to worry about handling or, again, paper copies later on your dealership. Key takeaways, right? Fraud and theft are on the rise. I hear a lot about first-party fraud now, credit washing. right? You want to do everything you can to get to know your customer, have some type of credit washing detection scorecard in place at your dealership. I think paper deal jackets are going away. That number of 60%, that was a year ago. I think in another year, we're going to be above 85, 90%. So if you haven't put a strategy together and moved from paper to digital, you should be looking to do so. And that's my speech. Thank you very much.